Are you a business looking for a fresh new way to reach potential customers? Well, you need to get airtime on IT TV, a 24/7 streaming and on-demand TV service online and on Roku. With Roku having a potential reach of 62 million people, it's a perfect opportunity to reach potential customers through affordable commercial and infomercial spots. Visit us online today at itnetwork.tv.
Good morning, and thank you for joining on another episode of the Roundtable Talk Show. I am your host, Sharifah Hardie, and I have an incredible show for you today. We're going to meet some new friends, learn, laugh, and share some information. But I'm going to ask you to do what I always ask you to do, and that is to go ahead and share this show. I'm pretty sure there's someone in your network, in your house, in your neighborhood. Maybe it's one of your coworkers, but there's someone who's interested in starting their own business, becoming an entrepreneur, changing their life, making themselves a better person. Whatever it is, they won't have this information unless you go ahead and share the show with them. And as I always say, friends don't let friends miss out on the Roundtable Talk Show. So while you're going ahead and sharing the show with your friends, I'm going to introduce to you a new friend, Miss Elaine. Elaine is amazing. She's an author, married, mother to 4, grandmother to 2, lover of history, antiques, traveling, and the pursuit of knowledge of people's stories. Good morning, Elaine. How are you?
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us on the Roundtable Talk Show. Please tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What do you do? And what are you passionate about?
Well, I have lived abroad for many, many years. I've been back in the States for many. So obviously I love to travel. I've always had a passion for reading and people's stories. And so a lot of that came from my traveling, getting to meet different people and learning about their cultures and things like that. And so while abroad, I came across a story, and it always stuck in the back of my mind that I wanted to write about it. And so it's been a long journey to get it to fruition, being able to get the person and the family to allow me to write their story. So it's been absolutely thrilling to get to do it.
We're going to learn a little bit more about you and your story, but I want to go ahead and introduce our next guest, who's going to tell us a little bit about himself. And we're going to talk to John. John is, John is a missions coordinator for MEA, nonprofit digital marketing course. Good morning, John. How are you?
Doing excellent. How about yourself?
I'm excited to learn more about you and what you do.
Basically, I started with student marketing agency a year and a half ago, and it runs alongside with the nonprofit Marketing Education Academy. And Marketing Education Academy is a whole thought process to get students a chance to actually develop a lot of the PR and marketing skills that they normally would have to, actually go to college and have that be their actual direct career. And so it really gives them a chance and opportunity to actually get there and kind of cut their teeth on some real marketing work and actually be doing business. So it's basically modeled after Harvard has a similar business class, and we very much decided that that was a good model.
Hey, Harvard's model is one that you can definitely emulate. I'm going to come back to you, John, but I want to go ahead and introduce our next guest, and we're going to learn all about Mr. Guido. Guido's documentary film, The Green Wave, recently premiered on Crackle, telling the true story of Louis Mulkey, a Charleston firefighter, basketball coach, and substitute teacher at a local high school who passes away in a massive fire while on duty. Good morning, Guido. How are you?
Good morning. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm excited to learn more about you and what you do.
Well, I'm a director and cameraman, and I work mostly in, reality and nonfiction filmmaking, documentary filmmaking, where it's all about authenticity and real characters, people, the unsung heroes in a way, And I've done a lot of different TV shows, including Starting Over for NBC, which won me an Emmy. Dance Moms, Raising Asia. Most recently, I've just finished a show for Netflix called The Agency. And of course, my latest documentary film is called The Green Wave, which is currently streaming on Crackle.com, which is an incredible, inspiring story and film.
Something tells me we're going to be talking about stories today. I see that as a theme that's coming up. Who knows? But I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next guest, the lovely Miss Carnellia. Carnellia is the CEO and founder of Mind Katalyst, a humanity-centered tech and innovation venture studio. Good morning, Carnellia. How are you?
Good morning. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What do you do? And what are you passionate about?
Sure. So, Carnellia Ajasin, CEO of Mind Katalyst. And Mind Katalyst is a software and hardware innovation studio. So, we focus primarily on software and technology development for clients who are mission driven, looking to solve real problems and also improve life as it relates to the software products that they're creating. I'm passionate about that. I'm passionate about creating meaningful opportunities in the product space. I'm also passionate about entrepreneurship and business in general, as well as capital equality as well.
Interesting. We're going to learn a little bit more about you. I'm going to go over to John for a minute. John, what's interesting to me is we have Elaine, we have Guido, who are interested in telling stories. But so many people find that they have a story and they don't know how to tell their story. Is there any advice or strategies that you can offer?
I can definitely tell you from the PR side of things, it usually is actually just go out there and tell your story. Definitely, like a lot of people, especially artists, more recently are like, oh, I want to be known for my art. I don't want to have to figure out all the social media. But it really is becoming large in a way where you can't necessarily rely on everyone to find you. You really have to go out there and push your story. And where, yes, it feels like a little bit like a self-promotion, it very much is where you have to go out there and do that.
Yes, you have to go out there and do that. Guido, how are you doing self-promotion? How do you get out there and tell your stories?
Well, a lot of times I get hired, obviously, for different shows based on, what I've done, but also I'm very picky. And projects usually come towards me. And, in this case, for this film, I watched a little news clip and my wife entered into the room and turned around with tears in my eyes and said, like, this is the story that I really want to tell. And 2 weeks later, I was already filming. So I think you have to be definitely like a go-getter. You have to, first of all, discover who you are and what you're passionate about, and then just go out and see how you can make it happen. And I do believe, yes, everybody has a story to tell. And I've seen it in nonfiction filmmaking a lot. Like I've done cooking shows, I've done true crime shows, dance shows, fashion shows. And a lot of times these are pretty ordinary people who, do some special things. And it's really about how to get it out of them and let them tell the story.
What is the story that you saw and you were so passionate about? What is this story?
Well, I've always had a knack for, inspirational stories, especially, sports stories, comeback stories. What was amazing about this one was really that, this wasn't just really about a coach teaching like an underdog team of how to win games and ultimately maybe a championship. But, this guy was a firefighter, and I have a ton of respect for first responders, educators. He was a mentor to a lot of these boys. They were struggling. A lot of them didn't have father figures, and he came in and mentored them. He made sure as a substitute teacher at this high school in Somerville that they would have the grades. And it wasn't just about winning on the court, but also off the court. And so he made it his mission for them to do great in life and get their lives first in order until they could really see their own true potential and hopefully win this state championship title that he dreamed of and predicted actually a year before it happened. and unfortunately, he passed away in the Charleston 9 fire, which was the largest loss of firefighter since 9/11. And now it was really about these boys, their dreams kind of shattered, kind of regaining momentum and seeing how could they win the state title in honor of their coach who just died in this tragic fire.
Wow, that is definitely powerful.
Mhm.
Miss Elaine, you said you had a story that you just had to tell.
Well, it was about a family. It was an American family that was living in Uruguay, and I was in Uruguay at the time, and I got to know about them. And so the husband had caught someone embezzling in their company, and he fired him. And it turned out to be a Tupamaru terrorist. And so then their family became targeted, and it was absolutely insane what they went through. And the family was totally terrorized constantly by them. And so it was everything they went through to be able to escape. And so their long arms, of the Tupamarus, was out there for years and years and years. And so they had to just keep quiet, low profile. The man was just totally frightened that they would find the family. And there was serious reason behind that. And they were definitely taught all that they had to do and not do to make sure that they remained safe, even after years of being away from Uruguay. So it was absolutely insane. They had to get the Uruguayan military eventually had to get in on this to protect this family. So it took years to be able to get them to allow me to write it. And finally, about 10 years ago, the gentleman started opening up and talking to me about it. And because I was relentless, I was determined. I wanted to get this story out. And so I got the support from the wife, actually, because she wanted it out. She knew that the family would never be able to divulge their names, but she goes, even if I can't divulge who we are, she goes, I want people to know our story. So that's kind of how it all happened. So
That is powerful. That is
yeah.
powerful. No, John, we got to get these stories out here. When you hear such powerful stories, you have a firefighter who dies in a huge fire. You have this story overseas. Do you get excited about marketing ideas or telling stories?
Absolutely. It's usually one of the biggest things that I actually enjoy. I actually went to college and graduated from FSU with a creative writing degree with a minor in business. So I was originally intending on doing a lot more writing, but with the important part of any of the stories and actually getting them out there, I guess, could you ask the question maybe one more time? Just
When I hear these stories from a marketing perspective, I immediately think about how do I get these stories out there? What needs to be told? What excites me? What interests
okay,
me
yeah,
about
that's
this
it
story?
was that exact word. So what needs to be told and where that was kind of leading to is the portion that needs to be told is the bit that's actually newsworthy, the kind of thing that will actually kind of reach out and kind of speak to everybody as a headline article. And as much as where you don't necessarily, once again, when you're sitting around looking to read the story, you don't want to necessarily promote that and push it where it's the forward facing. Once you actually get to where you want the circulation, you want the story out there, you do realize that you got to start kind of finding where the keywords or phrases are, or how you can basically shine up the story. Even though a lot of stories do have where they're already interesting, if it still kind of hits like a movie poster, then a lot more people are going to read into it, and then they're going to get the information that you wanted to pass along.
John knows his stuff. I can tell you, it just came out flowing all of a sudden. Carnella, I love the idea of a mind catalyst. We're talking about all of these stories, but the ability to think and to innovate and to create. What did you think hearing the different passionate, powerful stories?
Well, I don't think I'm in a different passion at all. I think most times when I do a lot of my talks, I talk specifically about entrepreneurs who are actually creating products that are improving life. So I have examples of entrepreneurs who are creating, who had one in particular who had no experience in technology at all, and was sitting on watching the news like everybody else, looking at what happened. In with the contamination of water in Flint, Michigan, and was so moved by it that she decided to develop a software application that anybody can take and test their own water, drinking water, cooking water, bathing water. Those are the things that she felt was relevant, that could be democratized for anybody to test that. And so, I tell a lot of those types of stories in my speech, because it's really important that people can see that we all have the ability to create opportunities for ourselves in terms of solving real problems that are existing in our lives and the greater society. And so those types of stories is what I tell often, to encourage others to kind of look at our lives, look at the landscape of what we're dealing with, excuse me, and not settle for that. Be a conduit, be a solution to.
So it's humanity-centered tech. I love it. What made you decide to come up with that phrase? We're getting Carnella. I think we have some technical difficulties, so I'm gonna jump over to Guido real quick. One of the things that Carnella was saying is she was talking about making a difference, seeing a problem, wanting to create the solution. When you saw this story on the news and it affects you emotionally, was there a point where you said, who am I to tell this story? Or, sometimes I don't want to go into imposter syndrome, but why were you so sure this was the story you had to tell?
Well, if something touches you emotionally, it draws you into it. And that's really with all the stories that I'm called upon essentially to tell. I find it's really interesting, like, in talking about what Carnella just said, technology, how, we advanced so quickly. We see this in filmmaking as well, where young people can pick up now a movie camera for like, a couple $1,000s. There's no reason not to tell your stories anymore. You have all this, equipment, which used to be very expensive, and, 8K, 6K cameras. It's really all about like finding stories with purpose that touches people, their emotions. And, in a way, technology always forces us to examine humanity one way or another. I remember the founder from Alibaba, Jack Ma, mentioned that, in a few years, robots will take over and take pretty much all our jobs. With the exception of and that's really what he's trying to instill on us parents and such, to teach children how to write, how to make music, anything that has to do with art. And I feel technology can really empower people to tell their stories. And yes, it is all about storytelling and, touching other humans.
Mm-hmm. Isn't there a film for what did you call it? A whole film where they bring in the different films made from iPhones these days. I think so.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter what medium you shoot on, as long as you know how to tell a story and it touches people, you will find an audience always. And it doesn't matter, and then, the big studios always try to make these mega movies, Marvel movies, spending $200 million. They don't necessarily guarantee that they're a big hit. And sometimes, you find those little gems that, that suddenly get promoted a lot because, they find an audience and people really gravitate to truthful storytelling, authenticity,
Absolutely. I definitely agree. John, do you feel like all the robots gonna take all our jobs and you don't need to teach the
Uh,
kids anymore?
Especially in the marketing side of things, we definitely try to keep ourselves focused on automation. So it's not necessarily a danger. I feel like that we're all going to be stepping into different roles. Like ultimately, while yes, the robots are coming for our jobs, like regularly I have an entire process automated at my job. And so I'll go from having an hour and a half to 2 hours of checks that I have to do to suddenly the computer's doing it for me. And I just have to double check to make sure everybody did it on a weekly basis. And so where it can be daunting at times, it still is where I feel like that it opens up a lot of availability to let people focus on high level and, as Guido pointed out, creative work. And so I don't think we're ever going to get replaced entirely. I feel like that we're just going to shift to different roles. I think the same people were saying the same thing when like newspapers and stuff came out, and then people just shifted to different kind of roles.
Yes, you have to shift. Carnella, are you with us?
Yeah, I had some technical problems. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. It's more than okay. We were just talking a little bit about, like you brought up the conversation about robots taking our jobs and the creativity aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't believe in robots taking anybody's job, but I do think that the influx of technology will challenge us to revisit educational systems and also how we work, right? And so, it may or may not be that we have the kind of the lower economic types of jobs anymore. It may be more of those jobs are easier to fill in terms of automation. So I think in terms of career choices for people who are looking for other opportunities, it may not be the in the same way that they had viewed before. It may be that people need to become educated more than ever before, and so that they're able to move along with the trajectory of how things are moving and changing, as opposed to kind of looking at things the way they've always been and kind of wanting things to remain the way it's always been. You have to evolve with innovation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Elaine, what are your thoughts? See you sitting there quietly, patiently.
Well, I think surprisingly in the future there's going to be somewhat of a movement more towards jobs that are not inclined to have that university certificate. There are so many people that are tech savvy, extremely educated, that learn all these functions in their own environment at home and can supersede anyone that has been through college. So I've seen it myself working in public school. So I just think we're going to go that route to a certain extent. The universities will always be very important, but I do feel like if it's either getting a small certificate based training to be able to do a certain job, that might be it. But I'm seeing a lot of people going the route of not necessarily spending all the money in a university when they can make big bucks, so to speak, on their own, just from their own grit and self-training.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly if they're in the tech space, right? Because I
Right.
mean, you don't necessarily need unless you're going to be a doctor or
Exactly.
lawyer or something like that.
I would hope they'd get an education at that point.
Right.
Well, you see also like how young people these days, producing YouTube videos about anything.
Yes.
If I have a problem around the house, how to fix things, I go on YouTube and learn it right there. Even questions about filmmaking, tech specs on cameras, all that. I find that stuff on YouTube, and a lot of times it's like self-taught young kids who are so advanced.
Yes.
Or little chefs, like little kids who create new dishes, bringing their own flavor towards it and showing that side off. And then, in a lot of times they're the full package. They have a lot of personality, and they're like kind of the, another little star on the rise,
Right.
Yeah, I think, I mean, just wanted to chime in. I mean, it's young people, absolutely, but it's older people too. But I think it's, it's this whole notion around, gatekeepers are now gone, right? There's no protocol that you have to have this experience or skill before doing this or that. It's, I have an interest in this area. I'm going to self-educate myself and I'm going to put it out there. And people are just not afraid to do that anymore, because there's no protocol that has to be adhered to prior to looking for validation or credentialed from some institution or person or manager or whatever that tells you that you're ready to do something or put something out there. I think people are now self-identifying, self-determining their destinies, without looking for validation or approval from others.
Exactly. They're morphing away from that stigma that the only valid person for higher positions are those that have that certificate. And I'm finding that, if they prove their worth, they prove their knowledge, they're moving forward, and they're being very much competitive in our workforce.
Yeah, I think it's a personality trait. I think more younger people, it's innate for them, but I think people that are in other generations before, some people find it challenging still to self-determine and say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to become an influencer. I'm going to, put my own YouTube videos up. And other people who, I guess, like myself, who I've always questioned kind of the infrastructure of how things are done in terms of protocol before you can, you need approval from other people to say that you have the skill set to now share with the world or expertise because you have a certificate from a university. You don't necessarily need to have those things to say you're an expert. I mean, if you've been doing something and have a strong interest from whenever, it's up to you to determine when you have it, that you're an expert. It's not up to anyone else. And I think that, when people approach their own lives, period, in that way, I think that they have a better opportunity to be successful in the trajectory of how and where this world, not just the country, but economics is moving from a technological perspective, from a influencer perspective, marketing perspective. People are self-marketing. They're not looking to anybody in particular to do that for them. They're looking to do that on their own, and they're looking to educational outlets like YouTube to help them to do that, as well as shows like this to help them to do that.
Yeah, I find it extremely powerful and empowering to see that you can, you don't need to have a publisher to publish a book anymore. You can self-publish. Same with, making little cooking videos, or you don't need an agent anymore or a big movie studio to create your own film or become a star. I mean, as long as you have a story to tell, you have something of a personality, you can make it. And the technology definitely can enable you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity for anybody who has a story to tell, a mission or a cause that they want to, share with the world, to do that, to put that out there, to make it, not necessarily to make it known, but just to share it with the world, because other people, once you put your information out there in terms of your mission, your cause, what you're looking to, work on and develop, what you're passionate about, other people, start to, your army of people start to, kind of corral around you and support, to be about that. I'm sure even this show in particular, when it first started, had those same kind of rudimentary beginnings and humble beginnings. And so, and I think this show is a testament of that. So the wonderful thing is people are just starting to feel more bold and more, I guess that see it as okay now that I can self-determine my own destiny, and I think it's a wonderful thing.
I think it is. And on that note, we are going to stop for a brief commercial break, and we will be right back.
I've had this problem.
Big problem.
I really needed
A good business consultant.
And I kept searching and searching.
There are so many choices.
It's really hard to find one that has all the things on my list.
But I finally did it.
Yes. Thank you.
If you are looking for one as well,
Look no further.
Here's a really good one.
Just use mine.
Use mine.
I'm very satisfied.
Definitely recommend.
Problem gone.
Thank you.
You need jordansrooter.com. Get free estimates, 24-hour service, special discounts for seniors and veterans. That's jordansrooter.com. Have a home repair or some remodeling you need done? No problem. We can handle all that too. Give us a call today at 800-300-0358. At Jordan's Rooter, we take pride in our work and always make sure to get the job done right the first time. That's jordansrooter.com. We want to be your Mr. Fix-It.
If you are just now tuning in to the Roundtable Talk Show, we started off discussing stories and somehow we wound up in technology. You never know where the conversation is going to go on the Roundtable Talk Show. But I want to go over to John. We've been having this conversation. You've been sitting there quietly and patiently talking about determining and self-determining your destiny. What are your thoughts, John?
I definitely think it's something that just you can kind of go out there and grasp. I think where I was saying earlier, where like different artists have to kind of self-promote, it very much seems like that just, especially with marketing, there's, I guess, some false thought process where people are like, like I guess, almost the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. And just it works for ghost baseball players, but it doesn't necessarily work all the time. Like where you can build a very good product and people might notice it from afar. It sure helps if it, is shiny and you're putting it on commercials and stuff. And so, well, self-determination definitely is great. I definitely think it also is where it is that you have to have the drive. You have to have that push and you have to pursue to make sure that your goals are going to be accomplished.
Okay. So, John, I heard you. I heard exactly what you said, but I kind of felt to a certain extent that was kind of like a politician answer. It kind of didn't tell me whether you agree with it, disagree with it. What are your thoughts specifically on determining, how far you can get with or without maybe a certificate?
Oh, like without the certificate, I definitely think that that's trending very much so. Like as we were all saying, just like there's quite a few companies, even like Amazon, that are starting to pursue actually having where people can get a certificate or something for 6 months of training to prove that they can do the role in the job. And I've always been a big proponent of things of that nature because people are very much able to just pick up new things and learn it. Just I think it takes 500 hours for someone to be considered an expert on something. And if you have the drive and the determination, it doesn't really take that long to get to that 500 hours.
Okay, so with that question, how many hours is it going to take in Marketing Education Academy?
I would imagine that you could probably have a pretty good idea and stuff, especially some of the students. They come in and they've got a lot of ideas, but then they see, because of how we kind of work, we have a lot of different specialists. And so some student will be brought in because they'll have particularly an affinity with Twitter or Facebook and some other social medias. And then they'll come in and find out all the things that are done on the back end of marketing, or they'll find out, we've got a video production team too. And video production pursues marketing and PR, a completely different beast.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been an eye opener just promoting the book. I mean, all the different nuances that you have to be able to learn, pick up. It's a whole education, hindsight being 2020. I did a lot of the correct things, but at the same time, you have to prioritize, so that way you're not wasting a lot of time and make certain areas successful, and then add in. So in other words, you don't have to do everything at once. Make sure you're successful with the marketing tools that you're beginning with, instead of having a bunch of, half efforts, so to speak. So
No, I get it. I know exactly what you said. One of the questions people ask me, because people say you have to be on all social media platforms. And I always tell people you should be on the social media platforms that you are actually going to work. I've seen so many people get these set and forget programs and they post out. And then when people comment or they ask questions, they never respond to those comments. And so I'm like, if you're going to work it, if you're going to post on it, if you're going to comment on it, then I say be on all platforms. But if you're not going to focus on those platforms, there's no point in being there, especially when your last post was 2018. It'll count more against you than it will help you. But those are my thoughts. I hear you nodding, Guido. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think, and I agree with a lot that has been said, but ultimately it all comes down to education and the level of education. Who's your teacher? I mean, online schooling is great, especially when, you need affordable, education, and, you don't need necessarily an Ivy League kind of education that is going to cost you $200,000 and set you back quite a bit. However, I've seen teachers make a huge impact on students, and not everybody's kind of an outgoing person who can kind of self-teach themselves. I mean, in my documentary, this Coach Mulkey, he had to become a substitute teacher in order to get those boys to study. He dragged tables onto the basketball court, have them study if they haven't had finished their homework for the day. Nobody got to play until their homework was finished. You need a person like that who really lights a fire underneath you and tells you of the importance of a proper education. Somebody who can see the bigger picture. Young people, a lot of times, they don't see really what's out there for them, who they truly are, and they need somebody else who have their back and inspire them and tell them really what their path might be, and to look a little deeper beyond all the hurdles that they see in their lives.
Excellent point. Excellent point. So often we just look at YouTube and want to be an influencer and don't understand how many hours and how much time it takes, how much equipment, things. It's not easy. You can't just necessarily pick up a phone and start filming and then you're the next big thing. It still takes time and education and practice. So I definitely agree with you, Guido. I see you nodding over there. Carnellia, what are your thoughts on what Guido had to say? This is fun. We're going to have fun today. See. So we're going to throw it over to Elaine. What are your thoughts on what Guido
had? Anything you have to have a passion behind it. And that for me was, I've always wanted to write a book. And by finding this story, it was the pursuit of talking the main character in my book, talking him into allowing me to trust me that I would secure their safety and not divulge anything. So it took 10 years. That's how long it took. But 5 years into that 10 years was when I was able to get his trust, and he began to really open up, and I would just write things down and write. And then when he realized that this could be done, the story could be written, and no one worse for the wear. That's when I went full steam ahead and began writing. And every time I got to the point where I was at a closure, then I started getting phone calls going, I remembered this. Oh, I remember that. And then I have to revisit my storyboard and reconfigure and rewrite in certain things. And so, I wasn't complaining. It was great, but it was like, oh my gosh, So.
Yes. But it was an education process. You
yes.
figured it out along the way.
Yes.
Carnellia, are you with us?
I don't know what's happening. I keep coming in and out, it looks like.
So are you in or you out? We don't know yet.
Yes, I think I'm in.
Well, you're talking to me, so that's a good idea. That's a good behind and you are in. So that's great. I wanted your thoughts on what Guido was saying. I don't know if you heard what Guido was saying, but he was talking about education and this powerful firefighter who taught the students on the course, but having someone in your life who's an educator, who's someone who pushes you and helps you with that education. I wanted your thoughts.
Yeah, sure. I at some point homeschooled my children, well before it was mandated on many parents. And so I did it by choice because I just wasn't happy with kind of the educational school system, where we lived. And I think, online learning is not for everyone, right? And it really depends on the student. Just like working from home is not for everybody, some people need to go into the office and some people need to go into a building to get that educational component in front of a teacher. And so digital offerings doesn't work for everyone. And I think that's something that we're now seeing, in society, because now it's mandated because of COVID, that has to be relooked and kind of rethought. But definitely, I agree with what was said before, that everybody needs, students, adults, everybody needs somebody who has their back, who understands them, who can see the potential that they have to bring to this life. And I think that's a valid point.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But I want to go to something you said, Carnellia, when you were just speaking, and especially because this is my love, my joy, is the whole work from home. Too often we feel like we can't do something, we won't do something. That's not life like me. That's not for me. I think a lot of people all over the world, when they were forced to work from home, they figured it out. I'll give you a prime example. My mom works for a large healthcare company, been going into the office, had the commute, yada, yada, the whole nine. And she would never have thought about being able to work from home. COVID happens, she's forced to work from home, and now she's like, oh, I'm never going back. Like, this is, like, welcome to my world. Like, this is the most beautiful world ever. So sometimes, we don't know what another experience is or what works for us until we are absolutely forced into that experience. What are your thoughts?
I mean, and sadly, like I said before, what we're seeing now, I think some of the data is coming out. Working from home isn't for everyone. Some people are feeling isolated and they're feeling, not really comfortable working from home. Some people are finding that they're working from home and they don't eat lunch, or, they don't get out and walk and work out, or, I've been working from home since 2011. So this is like, kind of new. It's not new for me, but most people are like, well, I find that I don't take lunch anymore, or I work through, 8 hours sitting in that one chair in the office and or my living room. And so I think people are now kind of seeing that, okay, I need to have just like you did at work, you have breaks, and, you have your coffee breaks, you have your, your lunch break, and you have an afternoon break or whatever in between these Zoom meetings to get your body moving and to fuel yourself by eating lunch or scheduling lunch, putting lunch on the schedule, or, those kinds of things. And so, it's a wonderful opportunity for people to kind of map that out. But like you said, a lot of people are thinking, and not just the workers, but people, also companies are thinking, wow, people are actually more productive, working from home. I don't necessarily have to be watching them 24 hours a day to make sure that they're productive. They just seemingly are, and so I think the shift of the thinking around working from home and the digital and digitally meeting each other has to shift. I've been reading since, like I said, when I started in 2011, I was reading a book called Remote by Eric, not Eric Reef, from the CEO of Basecamp. And so he talked a lot about protocols of how to work from home or work remote in an effective way. And so he talked a lot about, emailing and having the ability to communicate via writing, as part of the process. And so that's a really heavy dependency for them in terms of the success of working remote. And I think I recommend that book for everybody who's working remote, because it is very, very, it's a shift in how we are looking at things. Most people, when they work remote, as they said in the book, is they want to create the same environment that they did in person, but now via Zoom. And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. Like, we're not having happy hour after we spent 8 hours of meetings on Zoom. Now you want us to come in for a happy hour at 6 o'clock back on Zoom. Like nobody wants that. Like, that's not a fun happy hour. But a lot of companies were actually mimicking the exact same scenarios in the office and then putting it on Zoom. And so that's just not how it works.
No, it's definitely different. But one of the things that you said that was very interesting to me is that when you kept mentioning taking a lunch, for me, one of the main reasons why I wanted to work from home was this being able to take a lunch. One of the last companies that I worked for, they had absolutely no food in the building. They had a couple of vending machines, and then they had no food or no restaurants within walking distance. It was a very industrial area. And so the closest food place where you can get some type of food was a McDonald's, which was like 6 blocks away, and you had a 30-minute lunch. And I was like, I can't do this. I like to sit. I love to work from home, enjoy my food, so you got to find, to a certain extent, aside from the whole global pandemic thing, what works for you. John, I see you nodding over there. What are your thoughts?
Oh, from the working from home, I've been enjoying it quite a bit. But it definitely is one of those things and stuff where just 8 hours in a chair, not so much on my end, because I have 4 cats that are living in the apartment with me. And so just if anything happens for 30 minutes where it's too quiet, you have to get up and check, because that's just as suspicious as if hearing crashes in the other room.
The cats are quiet. It's cats and kids. When they're too quiet, something's wrong. How about you, Elaine? Have you been? I'll go over to Guido real quick.
Oh, I had a quick thought on this, though. I don't think that Zoom can replace in-person learning. I mean, I've seen it with my wife, who's an elementary school teacher. There's a lot of kids who have really trouble focusing. And, it's also for a teacher, it's not quite as easy to translate, to a screen and for people to read what you really mean. It just, a lot of stuff gets kind of lost kind of in translation. You have to probably smile more, be more outgoing in order to kind of reach the kids. It's not the same as being in person with them and inspiring them. So I feel like as convenient it is for a lot of people to have this kind of at home, stay at home kind of learning, it's much more challenging for kids who need to obviously focus, but also being able to have that kind of inspiration. I mean, a lot of them, they might not even have like a home that they can show off or can learn properly as an environment, because there's just too much stuff going on and that distracts them. I find it kind of a bit of a challenge. I see it also like in terms of like, the content, producing content over Zoom, because I've been asked for that as well, to direct kind of talent over Zoom. It's just not the same as being in person and filming in the moment, with a person.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I saw a comedy show over Zoom, and I was like, no, this is not the same. This is not the same. No. Elaine, you were agreeing. What are your thoughts?
Well, of course, I presently work for the education system myself, and I know how much the teachers have poured their heart into what they were doing during this COVID time when the schools were shut down and they were doing the online learning. And it's the children that had parents that could support them because they had knowledge of technology, were the ones that did flourish a bit more. But the other children that had families that were not tech savvy, they had a tendency to flounder because they didn't have that support system at home, and not necessarily because the parents weren't supportive. It's just they didn't know how to support. And so we noticed a big dive in their academic growth. So much so that when they came back, we spent quite a long time with the children just going over what would have been their basics for their age level to rehash, that subject to help bring them up to speed. So it wasn't easy. So technology is great, but you have to, I think, be a little more mature, a little bit more older if you're purposely seeking out for knowledge for whatever you're doing. That works great, but for the younger children, there's nothing like a live human being. It is still very much needed.
Yeah, my opinion on that is that having homeschooled my children, I mixed it up. So we did some online learning. We did primarily in face to face, but the online piece of the curriculums that I used with them, Khan Academy, things like that, were supplemental. And I think that what we're seeing, because I did hear about the same thing, Elaine, and talked to a lot of parents, is that it wasn't just the technology in terms of the younger kids, is that it was more of the support of the parents who just, they weren't teachers.
Exactly.
Like they didn't know how to educate their kids. Like I'm not a teacher either, but I know how to educate. So it's like, they didn't really know how to teach their child. And so, Zoom is Zoom is Zoom. You just click a button, you're on Zoom. But many of them just didn't know how to teach their child how to write, how to do penmanship and how to do, math and algebra, and they just didn't know how to do it. That was something that we primarily relied on teachers to do, particularly in the younger grades, the younger elementary grades. And so I think that's a lot of that was a big challenge for parents, especially when they had to work. So they had to work also, and then you also have to educate your child, and you don't know how to teach. So it's like that's a very disastrous situation to be in, because you're mandated. You can't just send them somewhere. That's why I love that these educational pods are popping up, or had popped up, where a real teacher was, saying, hey, I can teach your child while you're working via remote. And then they would meet with the parents on Zoom and kind of give them some tips on how to properly teach the child, or coach, or educationally coach them, or tutor them. So they found ways to do that. But it was really, I think, a lot of the challenge was parents' inability, and not no fault of their own, to, they didn't really know how to support the child from an educational perspective.
I definitely agree, because I said the same thing. My kids are 24 and 27, but if they were smaller and I had to teach them, they would have been in a lot of trouble, especially with math. I would be like, I don't know, figure it out, add it. 1 + 6 is something I don't know. But hey, they're older. This has been an incredible show. We are coming down to the last few minutes of the show. And what I love to do at the end of every show is just simply allow my guests the opportunity to speak directly to the audience, to everyone who is watching this show live, as well as everyone who is watching in the archives, and let them know what you want them to take away from your appearance here today. And we're going to start with you, Guido.
Well, obviously, I would love everybody to check out the Green Wave. The title, by the way, comes from, the school's mascot, which is the wave, the Green Wave. And I chose the title because in the beginning, this basketball team was a losing team. There was no wave, not even a ripple. It was flat. A lot of the players were saying, it was just like a disaster team, And that's when this coach found them. And a lot of the boys, they were at a kind of a crossroad, and they needed him as a mentor, as an educator, as a coach to really, let them thrive and believe in themselves. And so, this he caused ripple effects, and ultimately it became kind of a tidal wave once they won this state title. And beyond that, I think those boys are still making incredible waves. I mean, one of the success stories is AJ Green, who's now a big NFL star, playing for the Cardinals, and he was on that team. And I urge everyone to check out this story. You can watch it for free on Crackle.com. It's called The Green Wave, and hope you get inspired. And especially in these times, we all need a little bit of an uplifting story like this.
Absolutely. Definitely have to go ahead and check it out. John, what do you have for the people?
Definitely just wanted to at least mention marketingeducation.org is the website for Marketing Education Academy. Our next digital marketing certificate program is going to be coming up in February on the 24th. And essentially, those are 6 weeks of courses every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time.
Okay. Love it. Love it. Marketingeducation.org.
Yep.
Elaine, what do you have for us?
Well, if you're looking for a exciting, page-turning, suspenseful read, I would encourage you to get my book. It's Elaine Broun, Carrasco 67, A Harrowing Tale of an Imperialist Pig. My webpage is www.elainebroun.com, and Brown is spelled Broun. There are QR codes on there that'll take you direct to the link for the book. This is a novel based on a true story, and so it is a very heart-wrenching, riveting read, and I hope you enjoy it.
Absolutely. Definitely have to go ahead and see all over here today. Carnellia, what do you have for us?
Sure. Yeah. So anyone has an idea for any software application or hardware, please reach out to me at www.mindkatalyst.com. I also have a book that's coming out sometimes second quarter of 2022. I'd love to share that with you, Sharifah, when we do launch that book. But right now, anything that you have that's in regards to product development, we're even having we're going to be launching a virtual accelerator for folks who are interested in, kind of ideating around an idea that they may be kind of toying with to create an MVP, which is your first level product. We're looking to put out a notification for people to join that incubator. So if you want to join the website, you can get my newsletter, and then you'll have all announcements based on that. So again, you can reach me at www.mindkatalyst.com.
Absolutely. I love it. Definitely want to go ahead and grab your seat now for next year, 2022, because the Roundtable Talk Show books up fast. So we want to go ahead and get you scheduled when your book comes out. I want to thank you all for being guests on today's episode of the Roundtable Talk Show. And I especially want to thank everyone who tuned in to watch this show live, as well as everyone who's watching it in the archives. I definitely appreciate your support. I appreciate you watching. I appreciate you sharing. But as always, the most important thing to me is that you support our guests. Our guests are here this morning to support you, to share their information with you, their knowledge, their expertise. So please support them. Their website link is in the Facebook post. Follow them on social media, reach out to them, send them a message. And when you do, please let them know Sharifah Hardie says hi. Now, if you're interested in more ways that I can help your business, or maybe you want to be a guest on the Roundtable Talk Show, please visit my website at AskSharifah.com. Until tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific, everyone have a safe and a blessed day.